From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We start in Brazil, where the United Nations Human Rights Office has condemned the assassination of left-wing councilwoman Marielle Franco. It has demanded that authorities fully investigate the case immediately. The UN said the investigation must be transparent and independent to be deemed credible. On Thursday night, 50,000 people turned out in Rio de Janeiro, and there were protests in many other Brazilian cities to protest against Franco's killing. Franco campaigned for the rights of Rio's poorest and fought against police excesses. She also stood out in the region's male and white-dominated political scene.
I'm here because I'm not going to see another slain black body in Brazil. I'm fed up, that's enough, and I'm in the streets because of that.
We are in 2018 and injustice carries on. That is why we gather here today. We are tired of injustice. We want this to not go unpunished for our friend, our colleague, our sister's death, not to go unpunished because her blood cries out.
Franco was killed on Wednesday night after attackers pulled up next to her car in central Rio and opened fire. On Thursday, her coffin was carried by friends and colleagues from her party, PSOL, through the crowd paying homage. They included Marcelo Freixo, the party's elected representatives for the state of Rio. Freixo himself has received numerous death threats. Our correspondent, André Vieira, filed this report amid last night's protests.
Last
night, Rio de Janeiro councilwoman Marielle Franco, one of the most well-known human rights activists in this country, was murdered. Social movements are demanding an immediate investigation into this case. Marielle Franco was a resident of Favela La Mare, a favela which is among the poorest communities. She was the fifth most voted councillor of the city and the main person behind the lower house investigation of the militarization process of Rio de Janeiro. Today, many demonstrations are being held in Rio and across the country to reject this atrocious crime of the assassination of Marielle, who was opposed to President Temer's administration and also to local governments which commanded the military intervention of Rio. She was a black feminist activist who fought for people's rights. As a result, international social organizations are demanding justice and have expressed solidarity to Marielle Franco's family. She will always be remembered as the activist who fought for poor people.
That was André Vieira from Rio. The effects of climate change took top priority at the Association of Caribbean States meeting being held in Venezuela. Member countries have been discussing ways to make the nations more climate resilient. They are also looking for ways to fund infrastructure projects across the region in the wake of last year's devastating hurricanes Irma and Maria. Venezuela, Mexico, and Cuba have announced significant contributions to these projects. Cuba will provide expertise in areas of interest such as economy, tourism, and trade.
Day 2 of the ACS meetings focused on the fight against climate change and natural disasters. Delegates said these issues should be at the top of the Caribbean nations' priorities.
Cooperation doesn't work by the way of charity. What we need is cooperation by way of solidarity and fundamentally cooperation among southern countries.
Bolivia, which is an observer in the summit, backed the call for integration. It proposed creating a cooperation agency following the model of the Bolivarian Alliance for the peoples of our America or ALBA.
This is not a new phenomenon. It is linked to development. Our revolution has been concerned about these issues since a long time ago, and we have been trying to get knowledge and tools to face natural disasters.
Finding external financing to support the Caribbean region is another main goal. Countries such as China, Kuwait, Iran, and Russia are actively participating in these discussions.
I believe it is really important because, as we know, the United States is quite aggressive against Venezuela and other nations that are here. So I think Russia's role is very important to try to balance. We have very good friends here, and it is important that we came to strengthen development and our relations.
Over 250 million people live in the Caribbean region. Promoting sustainable development and strengthening ties through different transport and trade agreements have been the most important achievements during the summit. The ACS met in closes on Friday with a visit of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro.
The Colombian government and the National Liberation Army have signed a joint statement agreeing to continue this round of talks until May 18. The first day of peace talks in Quito laid the groundwork for a potential new ceasefire agreement. The last ceasefire was agreed to last October and lasted for 101 days. In an exclusive interview with Telesur, the head of the ELN delegation called on opponents to dialogue to see that this is real change for peace.
We are happy and we hope that this is a good response for all sectors of Colombia and the international community, which had asked to return to this dialogue. Our call is that those who wanted this force for peace to continue will continue accompanying us, and those who did not want this roundtable to reconvene, that they understand that the opportunity for peace in Colombia is historic, and that if there are criticisms regarding things on the agenda or the development of the various points, that they make those criticisms. But what's most important is that this force for peace is truly for all Colombians.
Chilean President Sebastián Piñera has held a meeting with former leaders to discuss the dispute with Bolivia over sea access. This case is before the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Former Chilean leaders like Eduardo Frei and Michelle Bachelet attended the event at the Moneda Palace. Piñera said they stand united and will not recognize The Hague's decision if it rules in favor of Bolivia.
Regarding the legal dispute presented to the International Court of Justice, I want to reaffirm, once again, the Chilean arguments and position based on legal and historical evidence, and I want to recognize the support of all former presidents of Chile in the legitimate defense of our rights and our interests.
And despite that, Bolivia's President Evo Morales is currently in Spain, drumming up support in his fight to reclaim a sea access.
Chilean former presidents announced that they won't recognize the possible decision benefiting Bolivia regarding the maritime litigation between both countries. Those results are expected in a matter of days.
They are talking way before the sentence is made, and even before a possible defeat in The Hague's International Court. We think this looks nothing like the Chilean state we used to know, one that respects international rights.
The hearing from the border dispute between Bolivia and Chile will begin next Monday and continue until March 28th.
If they don't accept that potential outcome, they would be turning their backs on international rights and the Hague International Court, also to international agreements signed by the Chilean state.
Meanwhile, Bolivian citizens from neighborhoods in La Paz are placing flags outside their homes and in public places, supporting their country's cause.
Our grandparents have been fighting for our sea for centuries. I thank President and brother Evo Morales for leading this fight.
It's time to get our sea back and to make it peacefully. Chilean president must understand that Bolivia needs the sea. They think we want to fight, but we don't. We just want to share the sea with them.
Bolivia sued Chile in 2013 in The Hague, looking to finish negotiations that had been interrupted more than 10 times. In 1879, Chile claimed more than 120,000 miles of land that connected Bolivia to the Pacific Ocean.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
Because the people of Grenada and the leadership of Grenada speaks English and therefore can communicate directly to the people of the United
isn't nutmeg that's at stake in the Caribbean and Central America. It is the United States national security.
Welcome back. Former President Alberto Fujimori in Peru returned to court this Thursday, this time as a witness in the trial against his former advisor, Vladimiro Montesinos. The case revolves around the kidnapping of a journalist in 1992. Jaime Herrera with the latest from Lima.
Muchas gracias por el pase. En efecto, el día de hoy el dictador Alberto...
Former President Alberto Fujimori is in court once again, this time as a witness in a case related to his former advisor, Vladimiro Montesinos, and other military officials who worked under Fujimori's regime. They have been accused of kidnapping journalist Gustavo Gorriti alongside politicians on April 5, 1992. This was the day when Alberto Fujimori staged a coup and dissolved Congress, as well as other justice institutions. During the hearing, Fujimori denied participating in the kidnapping. He also denied giving orders to kidnap the journalist and invoking the military's participation in this. Fujimori says he doesn't remember those events. Fujimori delivered a full denial despite the fact that this was one of the key cases that led to his 25-year prison sentence. The prosecution said Fujimori had nothing to lose now because he was granted a pardon by current President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, and now he is supporting Montesinos and the military that served during his time. The prosecution said Fujimori has nothing to lose now because he was granted a pardon by the current president, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, and now he is supporting Montesinos and the military that served during his regime.
That was Jaime Herrera from Lima. Peru's Congress has accepted a new request seeking to dismiss the nation's embattled president, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. Peru's Congress will vote next week on whether to impeach Kuczynski over alleged bribe taking from Brazilian construction giant Odebrecht. The opposition won 87 votes to unleash the impeachment process, the same number required to have the president impeached in next week's vote. Hundreds of young Peruvians marched in Lima on Thursday to protest against a controversial new bill on labor regulations for technical students. The bill has been dubbed the Youth Slavery Law by protesters. That's because it requires students of technical institutes to sign labor agreements for up to 3 years without receiving payments. Thursday's rally marked the 4th time students protested against this bill. And Nicaragua has implemented salary reforms. It has raised the minimum wage to help people deal with rising inflation.
Like most Nicaraguans, Jamie works at least 8 hours each day just to make ends meet. So he welcomes the news that minimum wage will increase by more than 10%.
That is the regular yearly increase, and it's good because prices keep going up. I think it's perfect for our home's economy and our families. They must keep doing it every year.
The reform applies to 9 sectors of the economy, including agriculture, fishing, mining, micro and small artisanal businesses.
Increasing salaries is important because it improves our purchasing power. But we want to tell the unions that they are not succeeding in creating better employment policies. We ask them to not just focus on the whole year, but what can be done more immediately.
The salary reform is based on a law which calculates salary increases in relation with national inflation. More than 500,000 Nicaraguans will benefit from this.
There is not COSAP's first time trying to change this law, and let's remember that behind this there is still a law of acquired right. We won't violate any of those laws.
The reform will be applied in two parts. The first part happened at the beginning of March, where people saw an increase of more than 5% in their wages. The next increase will come in September this year.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro is calling on the country's youth to embrace and benefit from cryptocurrencies. He said young people should create cryptocurrency farms. On his Twitter page, Maduro wrote that the new digital work plan for young people can mine world currencies. Cryptocurrencies are a priority for Venezuela. It launched the oil-backed Petro this year as a means to circumnavigate U.S.-imposed economic sanctions. Venezuela is also making sure the new U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, gets the same message given to his predecessor, Rex Tillerson. The message: there will be no coup.
There can't be a military coup here. We are in the middle of the 21st century. I need to say this to whoever talks about a military coup, that we are in 2018. A military coup. This is part of the past. Now, there have been attempts. Someone will always conspire. The empire always tries to move puppets in Venezuela to warm up something impossible, to warm up for obscure purposes, which is the national forces in Venezuela. This is not going to happen. The military forces in Venezuela are politically mature enough. They are respectful of the Constitution. They are respectful of human rights. They are respectful and admire democracy.
His statement came as Venezuela honored the late Hugo Chavez on the occasion of the 5th anniversary of his burial. The events took place at the Bolivarian Military Academy in Caracas. The flame of Commander Hugo Chavez was transferred to the 4F Mountain Barracks, and President Nicolás Maduro spoke about the legacy of Hugo Chavez. We'll be back soon after this break. Let's take a look at what our multimedia team reports. Welcome back. Russian citizens will be heading to the polls on Sunday for the first round of voting in the presidential election. With opinion polls at 80%, Russian President Vladimir Putin is widely expected to win. His nearest rival, Pavel Grudinin, the Communist Party candidate, is currently polling at 7.1% approval rating. If all goes as expected, Putin will be re-elected for the fourth time and will be set to rule until 2024, thereby becoming Russia's longest-serving leader since Stalin. Soyini Gray spoke to political commentator John White and asked him if the U.S. will play a part in this election.
The United States interferes in everybody's elections. The entire history of the United States is dripping in this kind of interference in the elections of other countries. The most infamous example of US meddling in Russia's elections was in 1996, where the incumbent Boris Yeltsin was on course to lose that election to the then communist candidate, but the Clinton administration weighed in with millions of dollars and money to help Yeltsin with his campaign and help to by campaigning alongside Boris Yeltsin to try and bolster his credibility. And there's no doubt that the US interfered in that particular election. But you know, economic sanctions, the economic sanctions that the US has leveled against Russia for the last couple of years over Ukraine, that in itself is an interference in Russia's internal affairs and election, because this is designed to create internal disaffection, to create internal economic hardship, and thereby put pressure on the country's leadership. And all this anti-Putin rhetoric is also a form of meddling in the election, trying to undermine his credibility, smear his character, question and impugn his honesty and integrity. So yes, the US has been meddling in Russia's election, as has the West in general.
Vladimir Putin is popular way beyond his party in Russia. Can you talk to us a bit about why that is?
Well, you only have to go back to the 1990s, where the country was pitched into a swamp on the back of the demise of the Soviet Union, whereupon a vast free market experiment was undertaken on the country, where legions of free market fanatics from the West descended on the country and allied with new converts to the free market religion within Russia itself to start destroying the country's state assets, stripping the country's state assets, rendering unfettered capitalism on a country that had known full employment and a welfare state and a system that was consonant to socialism, or really existing socialism. And the result of that was that between 1989, when 2 million people in Russia were living in poverty, that's living under $4 a day, this is World Bank figures, between that year and 1998, the figure had gone up to 74 million Russians had been plunged into poverty. It was an absolute catastrophe. And it was Vladimir Putin, when he came to power in 2000, who arrested this descent into this swamp. And he began to reassert the primacy of the state over these unfettered free market economic forces. He rolled back the oligarchs, he put them in prison, he started to, as I say, assert the primacy of the state, and he restored some kind of stability to the country, cohesion, pride, and Russians became proud again. Then he had to deal with the threat from the US and its allies, who were intent on imposing a Carthaginian peace on the country with the eastward expansion of NATO, despite verbal assurances that were given during the negotiations, which led to the demise of the Soviet Union between the then Bush I administration and Gorbachev, the last premier of the Soviet Union. And he had to deal with all that. And so he's done that magnificently, despite what the propaganda suggests to the contrary. Vladimir Putin will go down in history as one of the greatest leaders of the Russian people in its entire history, for the mess that he inherited and to where Russia now is quite literally miraculous.
And finally, here are other headlines from around the world.
The Libyan Coast Guards have rescued nearly 200 refugees between Thursday and Friday off the coast near the capital Tripoli. The majority of the refugees are women and children from African countries. According to the International Organization for Migration, more than 3,000 people perished at sea last year. Libya remains the main departure point for sub-Saharan African migrants trying to reach Europe by sea. The European Union has recently announced it would train Libyan coast guards to reduce deaths at sea. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has visited the town Dapchi, where more than 100 schoolgirls were allegedly kidnapped by Boko Haram a month ago. He met the parents of the missing girls at the same school where they were abducted. There has been wide national and international criticism against the government over its failure to locate the girls. It is the largest abduction in the country since more than 200 Chibok girls were kidnapped in 2014 by Boko Haram militants.
I hate to listen or hear anything about these people or even see their pictures. We haven't gone back to school yet, but I don't want to go back to the same school, but I want to continue my education.
French pensioners have held a protest in Paris against higher taxes on social security. According to the new reforms, people will have to pay more taxes on pensions over $1,000 per month. 9 unions called for a nationwide day of action against the economic measures implemented by President Emmanuel Macron.
We've come to the end of this morning news brief. As you know, this and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.